way.
I'm so happy to be with you today. Yoga was my gateway drug on the path of healing and discovering mind, body, energy ways to live a whole, fulfilled, and happy life. I am the author of the book, Patriarchy, Stress Disorder, The Invisible Inner Barrier to Women's Happiness and Fulfillment. And today I'm going to share with you about how yoga can open up the gates to those hidden barriers that are holding us back from living our happy and fulfilled life, what science has to say about that, and what practical takeaways you can implement right here, right now, starting today, on your path. And the biggest thing that I have to share with you today is that perhaps, what if everything that on your seeker's journey you've been trying so hard, you've been working so hard on changing in yourself has nothing to do with you? I remember my very first yoga class. At the time, I was primarily concerned with how I looked. And I was at the gym working out on the elliptical, and I saw through the glass wall of the yoga studio that there were all these size 0, super bendy, sexy girls doing all these cool things. And it was a yoga class, and I figured, I need that. So I walked into a class, I got on the mat, and very soon after having had the instruction of holding a pose for 5 breaths, I realized that I could not do that. It's not that the pose was challenging. It's that I realized I had so much anxiety in my body that I was literally jumping out of my skin. So I walked out of that class, but then I came back and I walked out of that class, but I stayed a little longer. And that repeated a few times. I don't know if that was my ego or that was my path calling to me. But I stayed through the whole class eventually, and I ended up in the final pose, Savasana. And for the first time in my entire life, and I was in my 20s at the time, I actually felt fully relaxed. I had this feeling that I was not familiar with before of actually feeling safe in my body. I didn't have the language for that. I didn't understand what that meant, but I knew that I liked that and I wanted more of that. But I also didn't know what to do with this insight. What did that mean that I was going through my life not feeling safe in my body? So on the path of trying to figure this out, I earned 2 graduate degrees in psychology. I built a thriving private practice in New York. I spent years in therapy myself. I got certified and taught yoga. I studied and practiced meditation and mindfulness. I read every self-help book I could get my hands on and attended every workshop and retreat I could get to, but I still wasn't there. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Let me know in the comments if that resonates. I still suffered from anxiety. I still didn't feel comfortable in my skin. And although I had a good life, I didn't feel fully happy and fulfilled. I did not feel free. Let me know if that sounds familiar on your journey. Maybe I am a lot like you. Maybe you too have accomplished a lot and worked hard on your personal growth and healing. And maybe you too don't feel that you are where you want to be. Today, I'm going to share with you the missing piece of the puzzle. My discovery that has changed everything for me and now thousands others. And maybe it will change everything for you too. And thank you for sharing your resonance, Jay. I will share with you today why what you've been trying to change in yourself may have nothing to do with you and the science behind it. I will show you the possibilities that yoga presents on this healing journey that you may not be fully tapping into. And I will give you a map of the healing journey, a 5-step system that's a distillation of over 20 years of my work in helping people achieve their ultimate success, happiness, and fulfillment by uncovering and addressing this game-changing missing piece. I will share with you as much as I possibly can in the limited time that we have together today, and I will let you know where you can get more and continue on this journey. How does that sound? Let me know in the comments if this is what you are here for. For most of my life, my journey was guided by the question, what's wrong with me? I could never get it right. Could never be what was expected of me. And I felt like an oddball. But despite that, or maybe because of that, I figured out I was really good at supporting others on their healing journeys. I loved my work as a therapist. I loved my life. I was married to a great guy. I had a wonderful daughter and a lovely home in New York City suburbs. And one day, when I was on the phone with a client, I noticed that I was smiling only with the right side of my face, and the left side of my face just hung in there, as did my left arm. I finished the call, walked out, got in the car, and using my right arm, drove myself to the emergency room. And there, after scanning me up and down for hours, they gave me the official diagnosis: just stress. Just stress. That was very relieving and also very puzzling for me because I did not feel stressed. And there, lying on the hospital gurney, I was confronted with this very challenging inquiry. How come my body was running the level of stress that took the left side of my body offline and I wasn't aware of it? How come that level of stress felt normal, actually felt exactly like I felt pretty much my entire life? What was creating the stress? Why I wasn't aware of it? And what did it mean? And also, as I was lying there and I finally had time to think and feel, I wasn't answering my phones, I wasn't taking care of people, and the security blanket of workaholism and stress was slipping, a very uncomfortable realization seeped through, which was that question, what's wrong with me, was still alive and well, was still there, despite many accomplishments, despite having a good life, and despite having done so much inner work. And it was a despairing moment because I actually didn't know what else to do. And thankfully, I had my own clients to look to for hope, because somehow they were shifting out of that disconnection and numbness and into the fullness of their lives. What was I doing for them that I wasn't doing for me? And the answer was that with all of my clients, I was using mind-body trauma healing tools, although almost none of them would have identified as having had trauma. But they were all showing this telltale symptom of trauma, which is disconnection from parts of themselves, from parts of their body, from their authentic desires, from their ability to live their lives fully, authentically, from that deep co-creative place. And for me, it took the left side of my body going offline to notice that, yes, I too carried that symptom of trauma. I too carried that disconnection. And the question became, is there some kind of trauma that we are not paying attention to? The trauma so common that maybe even all of us carry it. And what could that be? And on that inquiry, life started showing me evidence coming from the field of epigenetics, with the cutting edge discoveries that traumatic experiences are genetically transmitted. Trauma is genetically transmitted. And that was my light bulb moment. Women have been oppressed for thousands of years. Oppression is traumatic. Trauma is genetically transmitted. And that was the moment of discovering patriarchy, stress disorder, and naming this invisible trauma that we carry unbeknownst to us. Finally, I had the answer to the question, what's wrong with me? And the answer was nothing. There was nothing to fix, but there was something to heal. Here is a study that illustrates how traumatic experiences are created and passed down between generations. In this study, researchers introduced the smell of cherry blossoms to mice while simultaneously zapping their feet with mild electric shocks. These mice were then bred, and their children and grandchildren, when exposed to the smell of cherry blossoms, showed a strong fear and anxiety reaction. PSD, patriarchy stress disorder, or PSD for short, is women fearing the smell of cherry blossoms. What are cherry blossoms for us? Is everything that we authentically desire that has been historically prohibited and punishable for women under patriarchy. Loving who we love, authentically expressing our brilliance, our sexuality, being paid for our contributions. Let it sink in for a moment. Now, consciously, you may be very confident and very competent. However, this trauma lives in our subconscious, and our subconscious interprets increased visibility, vulnerability in a loving relationship, financial success as a threat. Studies in neuroscience have shown that our actions are decided in our subconscious. Our actions are decided in our subconscious. So the conscious mind is the last one on that bus. So if you are desiring to give a talk, or if you are desiring to send in a proposal, there's this glorious opportunity you want to apply for, and then you find yourself procrastinating, you find yourself not taking action, or you find yourself showing up and then self-sabotaging in the process. It's not you. It is not you. You are not getting in your own way. Have you heard this? Have you heard this in the self-help field? Let me know in the comments if this sounds familiar. Stop getting in your own way, right? Yes, right? As if that is something that we're consciously doing. This is actually trauma conditioning. It is trauma wiring that is keeping us safe from the threat of increased vulnerability, visibility, success, etc., etc., etc. Deep breath, deep breath. Yes. And exactly what you said, Rena, true for men as well. And I am getting to that in a moment. So it can be manifesting for you in one of three ways. One, you may feel stuck. You know that there is more to who you are, to what you're here to do, to be, to have, to experience, but you have trouble connecting with that clarity and moving forward. So that's one. Let me know if that sounds familiar, if you go there at all, right? Two, just put a number one if you're resonating. Two, you're on fire. You're encountering challenges and you're slaying them. There is no stopping you except you are feeling exhausted. You have trouble relaxing. Even if you manage to get a full night's sleep, you don't feel rested and restored. You may be having trouble with arousal, with orgasms. You may be experiencing anxiety. You may be experiencing stress-related health expressions. Two, let me know if that sounds familiar. And three, you're oscillating between the two. So put the number in the comments for where you're finding yourself most often. Great. 2, 1, 3. Yeah, it is all familiar. And it's not your fault. It's your subconscious signaling unsafe and your trauma defenses jumping in to keep you safe. I refer to trauma defenses as prison guards, and I'll share with you more about what they are, how to identify them, and how to begin to set yourself free from them holding you back from living and fully enjoy a life designed by your desires. So you may say, but what about men? As you are saying, and people across the gender spectrum, are they affected too? Absolutely. For men, the price of admission to club patriarchy with all its privileges has been very high. They've had to check their whole authentic selves at the door. Because outside of being strong, aggressive, competitive, and a good provider, patriarchy didn't want all those other feminine parts like warm, soft, compassionate, emotionally aware, and expressive and nurturing. It's traumatic having to cut off parts of who you authentically are because there is no space for them. Just like for women, for men and people across the gender continuum, this trauma has spanned across thousands of years and countless generations. PSD affects us all, and it is a major player in the mental and physical health, relationship, and financial issues people experience. And for people of color, in addition to PSD, there are the effects of the intergenerational trauma of oppression through racism and white supremacy. People marginalized based on their sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion, ability, or socioeconomic status also carry these intersecting layers of the trauma of oppression. So I'm going to be speaking from the perspective that I have in this lifetime, being in a mostly heterosexual white woman's body who carries the intergenerational trauma of the centuries of serfdom, wars, revolutions, famines, and persecution, in addition to patriarchal oppression. And your ancestors might have experienced that too. Despite traumatic experiences being different, I hope that you can apply this knowledge about trauma and how we heal it. Let me know how this is landing for you so far. First, what do I mean by trauma? You might have heard definitions of trauma having to do with a life-threatening experience. And that was the core of my confusion as well when I was trying to understand what's wrong with me because I did not have any life-threatening experiences. However, I was showing symptoms of trauma, so it didn't make sense. Since then, the field of psychology has embraced more a broader range of definitions of trauma, including adverse childhood experiences. And I have defined trauma even in a broader way. What I mean by trauma is any experience that made you feel unsafe in your fullest authentic expression. Unsafe in your fullest authentic expression and led to creating trauma adaptations to keep you safe. And if you're wondering, when have I ever felt safe in my fullest authentic expression? And what the heck that even is? Well, that's exactly the point. Intergenerational trauma. Many generations before us did not have space for their fullest authentic expression, and we have inherited it. And that is exactly why we're having this conversation today. So the first point that's super important to recognize is that if you're human, you have trauma. Personally, you might have experienced feeling unsafe in your fullest authentic expression and developing trauma adaptations, which we're going to talk about in a moment, to keep you safe going forward. And of course, we've all inherited trauma material from the previous generations as well. So you may or may not be consciously aware of all of these experiences where you felt unsafe, and certainly not all those that you have inherited, but your body certainly does remember them all. And that is why yoga is so helpful in helping us address, well, before we address it, we need to access the trauma material. Let me know in the comments, have you ever felt emotions come up on the yoga mat? Have you ever felt emotional on the yoga mat? Just let me know in the comments if that's a yes or a no. I'm thinking of one of my clients who told me this story about her experience on the yoga mat. She was doing a heart opening pose. And thank you so much for sharing. Evelyn, Fabiana, Rena, Caitlin, absolutely. Jay, sometimes, yes. So she was doing a heart opening pose. She was doing an assisted bridge pose. And a male instructor stood by her shoulders and was supporting her. And she was holding on to his legs. She was holding on to his ankles to come to the pose. And all of a sudden, what came out of her mouth with a lot of emotion was, "Don't leave me." She was shocked. She was shocked. So here she was. I think she was around 50 years old at that point, or in her mid 40s to 50. Accomplished, successful woman who kind of had it together, right? And have this strong emotion come up, and the words that didn't make sense, "Don't leave me," what, to the yoga instructor? Didn't make sense to her until we were processing it in a session afterwards. And we got in touch with the trauma of her dad leaving when she was 5 years old. And that 5-year-old was there inside. She was not consciously in touch with the suffering of her inner 5-year-old, but her body was, and yoga helped her access that, to her great surprise. So the mind tells stories about, it happened a long time ago, it no longer affects me, or I've worked through it in therapy. And here's a very important note that I want you to take away, that talking through it does not equal working through it. Talking through it doesn't equal working through it, because the trauma lives in the body. It's not enough to talk about it. And the body carries it, and the body doesn't lie. So when we work with trauma, we need the tools that help us access it in the body. Okay. And yoga can help us access and bring up a lot of trauma material, but where do we go from there? Yes. Thank you so much for your comments, and I hope to get to the great questions that you're asking. Please share your reflections, what's coming up for you. What's very important in these conversations is to recognize that we are not alone. In fact, we're all in the same boat. If you're human, you have trauma, and we can share our experiences and also how we get to work with them today and going forward. So keep on sharing, and thank you for doing that. So yoga was my gateway drug on my journey of exploring mind, body, energy, and modalities for healing trauma. I've studied and pulled from a wide range of them. And I've distilled the healing journey into a 5-step system that I'm going to share with you now. And I share it in much more detail in my book. So if this is resonating, you can actually download the first chapter of the book absolutely free on my website, drvalerie.com/book. And for those who don't stop at the level of the information and are hungry for a real transformation, we create an amazing experiential learning environment for that at our legendary virtual retreat, The Thriving Experience. The next one is coming up in 2 weeks. And if what I'm sharing with you today resonates, I hope to see you there. Go ahead and save your seat at thethrivingexperience.com. Tickets start at absolutely free. So I'm going to drop these links in the comments. Ooh. And here I am dropping them in the comments. So the 5-step trauma healing system, aka the jailbreak system. Why? Because trauma is kind of an invisible inner prison. PSD is kind of an invisible inner prison that we were born into without realizing that. So the first step of the system is waking up in prison, realizing that the prison walls are made out of collective, intergenerational, and personal traumas. And they are the ones preventing us from living our fullest, most authentic, fully expressed, happy and fulfilled lives. And it's not us getting in our own way. Okay? Can we agree on that? Can we let ourselves off the hook that it's all our fault? Take a deep breath with that. So it's very important. And we are actually at the stage together right now, waking up in prison and realizing that, wait a second, I have all this trauma in my system, and now I have leverage to recognize it and do something about it. So the next step on this journey is meeting your prison guards. What are prison guards? These are trauma defenses that are created at the time of trauma, whether it's something that you experience or something that you inherited. They're created at the time of trauma. And we use them unconsciously to keep ourselves safe. Here's how it goes. They show up in the mind, in the body, and actions domains. In the mind, they may show up as the inner critic, the imposter syndrome, a lack of clarity, mental fog. Let me know if any of that sounds familiar. Feeling distracted, feeling unfocused. These are the prison guards in the mind, because as long as this is going on, you're not in your full power. If you're not in your full power, this is not a threat. Powerful women used to be burnt at the stake. And something in our system remembers that. Not only burned at the stake, but locked up in asylums and have suffered tremendous consequences. And even now, the press coverage of women is very different. They tend to be scrutinized, criticized, diminished. So our system knows, right? There's a lot we need to stay safe from. Yeah, the inner critic. I see you, Jay. Um, mm, and you're in good company, by the way. As I share in my book, quotes from leading entrepreneurs and public figures, such as Meryl Streep talked about her imposter syndrome in the interview with Ken Burns. She was talking about fearing that they have made a terrible mistake with all of these Oscars and they just gonna come and take them away someday, and nobody wants to see her in another movie, right? Or Shonda Rhimes wrote about it in her amazing book, Year of Yes. Year of Yes. It's a fantastic book, highly recommend. And she talks about how the more successful she was becoming, the more miserable she was becoming, because her nervous system, right? That's not her words, that's my words, right? That's my interpretation of her nervous system being in this constant state of overdrive, because she was stepping far outside of what was considered safe and acceptable for a woman, and for a Black woman specifically. So this is something to recognize when we're reaching for our desires, we're playing big. We need to understand what's going on. So we don't blame ourselves, we let ourselves off the hook. And at the same time, we surround ourselves with healing conditions so that we can heal, because we can heal, and move forward with a lot more joy, with a lot less stress and friction. The mind, the body, how they show up in the body, these prison guards. In many ways, from trouble sleeping and relaxing to trouble with arousal, with orgasms, the energy up, anxiety, energy down, depression, right? Which, by the way, may start out as trauma adaptations, the system going into fight, flight, anxiety. If you don't have an opportunity to actually do what you need to do to keep yourself safe in that moment, or freeze, playing dead, depression, right? And over time, these adaptations can become lasting conditions. And this is a missing piece to understanding and healing them. What else? Stress-related health expressions. Autoimmune affects women disproportionately to men, and particularly women of color. Something is going on beyond what meets the eye, right? And my theory is that that something may have to do with oppression and intergenerational trauma living in our systems. And now that women have all this opportunity, right? Opportunity. It has become the opportunity to burn ourselves out, because the nervous system keeps running hotter and hotter and hotter the more successful we are becoming. As I say in my book, kind of funny quoting myself, but that's a quote that many women resonate with. They used to burn us at the stake, and now they just hand us the torches. Right? So what I'm sharing with you today is a call to put down the torches, and I'm going to talk to you in a moment exactly the steps that you can take to begin doing that. So meeting the prison guards, mind, body, actions, how they show up in actions, distractions, addictions, self-sabotaging behavior. When you have this important email to write and all of a sudden you find yourself by the freezer with a big spoon and a carton of Haagen-Dazs, right? And then transitioning to plopping down in front of Netflix, right? For a while. There's nothing wrong with you. You are not, it's not you who is sabotaging you. These are trauma adaptations in action. And what's the key to solving? Feeling called out. Yeah, I so hear you. And you're so in good company. So what we need to do, the missing piece here is, first of all, recognizing that the prison guards are not bad guys. They're not the enemy. They're trying to keep you safe, but they're doing it in ways that are keeping you imprisoned. So what we need to do is create safety in our body, in our nervous system, so that these prison guards can evolve to being our bodyguards. And that's something that we help women do in this system and in our programs. So what happens when the prison guards evolve to bodyguards is that you can stay safe on your journey to your desires. I'm thinking about Jill, who, before reading my book, she didn't think that this PhD conversation applied to her. After all, she was very successful. She had a 7-figure business. She had two beautiful girls, and just like she was a cool person, great friends. She had a great life. And when she read the book, she realized, to her great surprise, that she was living in survival instead of thriving. And what does it mean, living in survival? It means that the nervous system is constantly, right, hypervigilant, that we are looking for threat, that we are focusing on how to stay safe, right, at all costs sometimes, versus how to grow, how to thrive, and play the game of how good can it get, right? We keep playing that game of how much can I bear, instead, that we've inherited from generations before us. And so she got on this healing journey. And what unfolded for her is that she recognized that she was closing off to the possibility of a romantic relationship that she actually deeply desired, but she closed that door after all this drama and pain around trying to date and all the heartbreak, online dating, and even a matchmaking service, and nothing worked. And so, to protect herself from that pain, and it didn't feel safe for her to show up with an open heart, right? She closed that door. And when she started using the tools to rewire her nervous system, to heal PTSD and other traumas associated with that, she found herself in a beautiful relationship. She attracted a partner who was her equal in every way. They created a beautiful blended family, and her business also went to the next level. Now she starts every meeting at work with writing on the whiteboard, how good can it get? And that's just one example of what becomes possible. And I want you to drop in that question to your inner knowing, to your inner wisdom. What might be possible for me when, instead of wasting so much energy fighting with my prison guards, trying to move forward, facing the headwinds of the inner critic, the imposter syndrome, all sorts of self-sabotage, and my body seemingly not being my friend and turning against me with all of these expressions, what would it be like if you liberated and reclaimed all this energy by getting on this healing journey, rewiring your nervous system, uncovering and healing layers of trauma that lives in the body? And have that question work in the background. It will inform your next steps. And I will be happy to share what I know, and in the hopes that it will support your journey. So we have waking up in prison, meeting your prison guards, evolving them to bodyguards. And then once you've reclaimed all this energy, all this time and energy, and quite possibly money from the project of fighting with your prison guards, trying to overcome them, when they're no longer in the way, in fact, those same trauma adaptations are now supporting you by keeping you safe moving forward. Now you have the energy, you have the capacity to do the healing work. You can go deeper into the tunnels and dig out ancestral, collective, personal traumas through the body and heal them. And the final stage of the journey is savoring freedom. Savoring freedom. And it may sound like, oh yeah, that's nice. It's nice to be there. It's actually a real butt kicker. Because once we begin, and some of you might have experienced that. Let me know in the comments if you have experienced that. Once you begin expanding, you begin moving towards your desires, your life gets bigger, brighter, you have more money, you have more love, you have more time, you love yourself more unconditionally, your system begins kind of glitching. And they can be self-sabotage. It's like a rubber band effect. You stretch and you snap back. And that's because our systems as women, our systems have really have not had the opportunity to live in a place of the life designed by our desires. So we have very little space in our systems to run big joy, big abundance, big freedom. Those channels withered over the generations of little or no use, almost atrophied. So in this stage, we actually rebuild them. Again, working with the nervous system, working with the subconscious, and very importantly, in a community of other women on this journey, reflecting to each other, yes, this is safe. Yes, this is possible. It's like a 4-minute mile. If you know that story, of Sir Roger Bannister, who set that record, broke that record for the first time, ran a 4-minute mile. Before he did, it was considered humanly impossible. Check that out. It was considered humanly impossible. And after he did, many other humans did as well. So when we're working together in a community and we see one woman break that personal record, and it resonates with us, we receive that secondary safety. Just like there is secondary trauma, we're constantly re-traumatized by watching other women being shut down in so many ways, right? Watching the news, seeing the state of women all over the world, and so painful. So flip it. When we're on this journey together, our system records, oh, this is safe and this is possible for me too. And so in our community, we see one woman break that record, another woman, one woman doubles, triples, quadruples her business. And then another one and another one steps into more money abundance as well. One woman takes her relationship to the next level, and then others go there as well. It's amazing how it goes. Collective trauma requires collective healing. And so that's why we're having this conversation as a collective. I hope by sharing in the comments and seeing each other's comments, you're recognizing, oh my gosh, I am so not alone in this. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for showing up for yourself and each other. And that's why we're holding our events also, our healing events, like the Thriving Experience coming up, the thrivingexperience.com. It's where you can save your seat. And this is an opportunity to be together for 3 days or whatever time you can join us for, and really shift from the level of information to the level of transformation. Really find those places in the body that feel constricted, that are playing small, that are not feeling safe. And in the conditions that we create with the tools that we're going to be teaching there, experience that shift from survival, how much can I bear, to thriving. How good can it get? So if this is resonating, I hope that you can join us at the Thriving Experience. So this is what I had to share with you about the 5 stages of the healing journey. And we have a few minutes. I believe we have about 15 minutes, so we have enough spaciousness for your questions. I know I've seen some juicy ones in the comments before, and I would love to welcome more questions. And just let me know what is resonating for you, where you are recognizing yourself, where you are feeling seen and validated on your journey. This is something that I really wish for you to take away from today, is the experience and this clear recognition. There's nothing wrong with me. What's affecting me may have nothing to do with me at all. What I'm trying to fix in myself may have nothing to do with me at all. And there's a system, there is a path. And by the way, in this system, and you can read more stories in my book, my own story, how this work transformed my life, more stories of women, where you may recognize yourself and get that secondary safety and a sense of possibility for your own transformation. And you'll see that in many of the tools that I share, I draw from yoga. I draw from yoga as well as many systems, mind body energy systems, specifically for healing trauma. And you can actually download the starter kit of some of these tools at drvalerie.com/book. Some starter tools that you can start playing with pretty much immediately. So I'm sharing the links with you in the chat as I am going a little bit higher up to check out your questions. Steph, yeah, the question I've asked myself many times, what's wrong with me? Yes. And Stephanie, same thing happened to me, ER. That is such a common experience. And it's so troubling that we carry the level of stress that oftentimes, until it stops us dead in our tracks by creating an interruption through our health expressions, we don't even know it's there. And if you had asked me, even that day when I ended up in the ER, Valerie, are you feeling stressed? I would have said, no, I'm not feeling stressed. I love my life. I'm living a good life. So something to consider. But the body knew and the body didn't lie. So the more we create these opportunities to listen to what is in the body, the more we can actually, well, I hope, prevent things from escalating, all right, down the path of turning up the volume to get our attention. And we can really get on that healing journey faster. Yeah. Gee, can trauma be transmitted in this life as adults from our mother, father, then genetically from our ancestors? That's a great question. We can absolutely, there is the effect of a secondary trauma. If somebody around us is carrying trauma in their system, and we observe. So we are herd animals, right? Our nervous systems calibrate to one another. So if somebody in our life close by is dysregulated because of their own trauma, and we observe their trauma adaptations, we're likely to learn from that, right? Even without realizing it. So conversely, when you are in a community practicing regulation, practicing trauma healing, that is also contagious. And it's actually much easier to be regulated as an individual when you are in a regulated community. You might have experienced that on your yoga path. Geneva, question for later. Using the word trauma feels dramatic to me, and as if I am negating the experiences of others who have big trauma. Is there another word that we can use, or how do we talk about it differently? I appreciate your reflection. Use any words you want to use. It is very important for me as a mental health practitioner and as somebody who carries a spectrum of traumatic experiences and somebody who's been on that healing journey in therapy for many, many years, never having the understanding, not from my training programs in psychology, not from the many therapists I saw, never having my experiences validated as trauma. And until they were, there was nothing I could do to heal. Now, the field distinguishes between the capital T trauma, big T trauma, and the lowercase t trauma. So if that is a helpful distinction, definitely go with that. This is the opposite of negating people's experiences. This is broadening the spectrum so that we can all find ourselves and be validated, and most importantly, have tools to heal. And not just be in the place of, oh, my experiences weren't that bad, right? I wasn't held at a gunpoint. I wasn't in combat. And so I don't have trauma. And then you don't have anywhere to go other than the hamster wheel of self-help, right? And not finding the way out. So thank you for asking. I know this is something that is probably on many people's minds. Jay, what if you don't know what the trauma is, but I'm having all the symptoms of it? Yeah, join the club. Me too. And so many thrivers, women who discover this path, oftentimes through my book, I break it down, like all the different experiences that you might have had that without recognizing them as traumatic, or intergenerational trauma and collective trauma. So I have big sections of the book devoted to unpacking those. And you know what? Very importantly, you don't have to consciously know what the trauma is. That's the magic of this approach. Your body knows, and your body will take you to healing. Your body will take you to healing. Trust your body, follow your body. Okay, great question. Oh my gosh, Rita, the emblem of Salem police still features an image of a witch on it. Oh, shudders. That literally stopped me dead in my tracks. Talking about being re-traumatized and all of the things we're not even consciously paying attention to. If we did consciously pay attention to all the things that trigger the intergenerational trauma for women, we would literally have zero capacity. We would not get out of bed. So our trauma defenses keep us from even recognizing them consciously, but unconsciously, there is that sense of not being safe. Unconsciously, consciously, you're like, I am safe. I live in a safe place, safe neighborhood. I'm in a country where I have all the rights, but subconsciously, it keeps getting triggered. And you know, because something comes up when you're just reaching for your desires, either knowing them or reaching to have them, experience them, live more fully, more authentically, something's holding you back. Creating trauma adaptations, creating that safety. And that is that loop, right? So thank you for reminding us, Rena. Whew. Yeah, Jay, my nervous system is running hot, waiting to become successful. Absolutely. There's a lot of that activation on the threshold. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Like, what if? What if I'm more visible? What if I have greater impact in the world? What if I show up more authentically? What if I have more money? Something that women often discover in our programs, which is completely shocking to them, by the way. They would have never thought that they actually carried that. They discover that subconsciously they may be holding themselves back from making more money because they don't want to out earn their partner, whether their current partner or their potential partner. There's that conditioning. Don't outshine, don't out earn. And they're shocked to discover that because it's definitely not what they consciously believe. And their partner is like, honey, please go make more money. But the subconscious is holding them back. And so these are very confronting discoveries. Even to make these discoveries requires a certain level of safety in the system. And we create that collectively. We create that in the Thriving Experience. We create it in our programs. I don't know if the conversation today is enough to start creating that safety. Perhaps just set the stage that it's possible, because we're not yet really doing kind of experiential work, right, with our nervous system directly. We're not even seeing each other on camera, by the way, which is a major factor in creating safety. I'm just wondering, like, I'm not calling anybody out, by the way, but I'm pointing out that because most people are not on camera, it diminishes the sense of safety in the room, right? So little things like that, we don't even pay attention to maybe, but our system registers. So more safety, more awareness, more healing, and more pleasure. Here's another nugget I want to throw in there. You know, all the things that you may have been working hard toward, like more joy, right? More happiness, more pleasure. To feel pleasure and joy and happiness, we must first feel safe. Safe. Safety first. If we're not feeling safe, our system is in fight, flight, freeze. We're not going to feel joy, happiness, or pleasure. We cannot relax if we're not feeling safe. So dropping this for your processing. You must feel safe to relax, to feel joy, pleasure, and happiness. And the subconscious is driving the bus. These are huge things I want you to remember and apply to your healing journey. If that resonates, and if it doesn't, let it go. All right. Oh, Steph, my wake up moment came from the trauma and stress manifesting in my physical body. Went for a physical and my blood pressure was 192/123. Scary. So feel you. And that's what happens for so many high achieving women. So many women find this work after already having had their wake up call through a physical manifestation. And some have big T trauma plus little T trauma. Absolutely. My perspective, which I believe has a lot of evidence, is that all humans have little T trauma. Maybe not all humans have big T trauma. However, if we broaden the scope and we consider intergenerational trauma, we may have that, even if we don't realize that. That's something to consider. Just as an example, one of our thrivers, women in our program, who is a doctor, Dr. Andrea, and she works in the area of chronic pain and has this just phenomenal revolutionary approach to healing it, but she was holding herself back. And at home, she has a beautiful family, loving husband, beautiful son. And what she started realizing going through this work together is that she was holding herself back from actually fully letting in the love of her family, her husband, of her son, and certainly holding herself back from shining brightly and being visible in her work in the world. Her grandparents experienced Holocaust, talking about big T trauma, massive big T trauma. Now, they never talked to her about it. She didn't know consciously what the experiences were, but her body was just like in those studies with mice, grandchildren of those mice fearing the smell of cherry blossoms. Her body was fearing intimacy and connection because what if her family could be taken away? Or being visible, what if she could pay with her life for her visibility? Like that runs deep, right? Things we're not even aware of. And here she was reading heaps of self-help books, being in therapy, and until finding that missing piece and addressing it, nothing was moving forward. And now she's unfolding her work in the world. She just left her job at the clinic to do this on her own full time and bring her unique method to the world. And she's much more happy and relaxed, letting in the love of her husband and son. And that's why we're doing this. There is something, there is something that what I want to share with you as we're winding down on our precious time together, right? First of all, I want to invite you in the final minute that we have. Just put one aha moment in the comments. If it's more one, that's good too, so that we digest it together. What are you taking away from today so that we can all savor it and share in this potluck together, right? What's your one or more aha moment? And I saved the best piece for last for you. Not only is trauma genetically transmitted, but so is healing. And like somebody asked, well, if it's not genetic, are you getting it from people around you? Yes. Our thrivers on this journey experience profound healing around them. Their whole families transform, their kids transform, their relationships transform, because they recalibrate, they unfold into more of their authenticity. Yeah. And that is precious. And that is why we're having this conversation today. That is why I'm here. That is why I wrote this book. And I want very deeply, I'm in a blended family as well. We have a daughter and a son between the two of us. And I want them to be free of the burdens of the intergenerational trauma. And I want my daughter, who is almost 11, and I've seen a huge transformation in her once I got on this healing journey after discovering PSD, right? In her confidence, how she shows up in the world. I want her to look around everywhere she goes, and I want every woman to be a role model for her. I want every woman to be fully expressed in her brilliance, her sexuality, her authenticity. I want every woman to be tapped into abundance. I want my daughter to grow up in a world like that. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for being a part of this movement. I'm going to pop the links in the comments again for how we can continue this journey together. drvalerie.com/book and thethrivingexperience.com. I hope to see you there in just 2 weeks. What the most important contribution, in my humble opinion, is embodying the change we want to see in the world. And this work has helped me discover exactly how to do that. And I'm so happy and grateful to be able to share it with you today. It's truly a pleasure changing the world with you. Thank you.